say welcome back to Meech Speaks.
Welcome back to Meech Speaks.
No, Meech Speaks.
Welcome back to 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 Meech Speaks.
I want to say something. A prize, motherfucker.
What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Meech Speaks. I'm your host, Demetrius Thigpen, also known as Meech Speaks. Now, before we even get started with this episode, head on over to your favorite streaming platform and leave this podcast a 5-star review, whether that's Spotify or Apple Podcasts, because this podcast deserves to grow just as much as we do. All right, so today's topics are communication and ego. Now, I say communication because communication is the best way for us to connect. And who doesn't want to feel connected? You know what I mean? It's how we express ourselves. It's how anything is essentially handled. Like, communication is always going to be key. Yeah. And I say ego because ego is going to be one thing that either can help us or it could break us. So with that being said, this weekend has definitely been an interesting, I'll say 48 hours. So Friday, I had posted a piece of content on TikTok. And the content went along the lines about attitude and why your attitude matters. But I led the conversation with, shitbags, hey, listen up. Top tier performance, y'all can go ahead and scroll by. And I went on to talk about how, your negative attitude is the reason why you're not going to be successful. To be honest with you, I feel like that was gold. You feel me? Like, good self-talk is always key. And I'm a firm believer that what you say internally, how you treat yourself internally, can determine how the external affects you. I know for a fact that's what I was trying to convey. But that wasn't what was received. You know what I mean? Like, that wasn't what was received. Yes, did it get views? Yes, did it get likes? Did it play into the algorithm? Absolutely. But the comments, you feel me? And this isn't one of those posts or this episode where I sit back and I'm like, woe is me with the comments and it's so much hate mail. No. I think one of the biggest things that stood out the most is that although I'm talking about one thing in my video, the comments are reflecting a completely different thing. Like, all through the comments, you can see, toxic leadership. You can see, if you didn't call Marines shitbags, they wouldn't react this way. And initially, you know what I mean? Like, I sat back because I really want to just take a step back for a second and just say this, is that a lot of times, we communicate something and we may have good intentions. You know what I mean? Like, we may have good intentions, but based off of what you say, based off of how you say it, can determine whether or not that message is even going to be heard. And based off of my comments, it's clear that the message wasn't even heard. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, they heard it, but they weren't really listening to it. Because the moment that I said, hey, shitbags, I had already isolated everybody. And this is hindsight speaking. You know what I mean? Like, this is not me 4 hours ago. This is not me on Saturday reading the comments. This is not that person speaking. This is just hindsight speaking. Because I did not realize at the time that what I had said offended so many people. You know what I mean? And I'm sitting back to myself and I'm saying, what the fuck is everybody so offended for? God damn, man, I swear. Marines are so fucking soft. That's the shit that I was saying. You know what I mean? I'm like, what the hell is everybody getting offended about? You know what I mean? Like, we hear that word shitbag all the time. And when anybody would stitch the video, when people would send me messages, I would get defensive. You know what I mean? And I'll dive into that portion later, but I really want to talk about the communication piece. Because immediately I would get defensive. So defensive that I'd be like, bro, I already talk about toxic leadership. Bro, I already talk about these things. Maybe if you worried about what was going on inside of you, you wouldn't be so stressed out about everything that's happening around you. I'm literally missing the mark with this right now. I'm literally missing the mark. So finally, somebody stitches my video and they start to, they get to talking about how, I shouldn't call people shitbags because it offends them. Maybe if I talked about how to help them, that would be more perceived, which is crazy because I already talk about that. You know what I mean? I already talk about that. And once again, I'm listening to the message, but I'm not even hearing it. And how many times, once again, communication is key. But how many times has somebody said something to us and we're already generating a response? We're not even listening to them. We hear what they're saying, but we already have our response in our head and we just waiting for them to shut the fuck up so we can say something. How many times? So with that being said, I acted in emotion and I tried to stitch the video, but I couldn't stitch it. So I went to his Instagram, and I called him. Because I was like this, nah, man, like we ain't got to go back and forth with stitching videos. We ain't got to go back and forth with comments. And as I'm having this conversation with this young man, it turns out we in the same MOS. We in the same field. We got the same type of experience. We actually are more similar than what we think. And initially, he did not know that. And I didn't know it either based off of what he said and what I said. And I bring that up, man, because, we sit back, especially as leaders, especially as parents, especially as spouses, and we find ourselves saying things and it's being perceived completely different than what it was said. Not realizing the tone in which we said it. Not realizing that the triggering words in which we say it. How many times have we been in a situation where we say to ourselves, like, dog, that's not what I said. That's how you took it. You know what I mean? And that's exactly what I said to myself. I was like, that's how they taking it, but that's not what I said. And I created this episode because I really wanted to just tell somebody, because I don't know who needs to hear this, man. But the reason why they not fucking with you is because you're not communicating in the language in which they understand. The same way that I have a podcast dedicated to helping people become a better version of themselves. It means nothing if I'm not communicating in the language in which my target audience is understanding. In the first 5 seconds, I'm already insulting them. What do you think they're going to do? They're going to tune me out. They're going to generate a response. They're already saying, fuck him. I ain't trying to hear that shit. He thinks that he's better than me. And that's exactly what it seems. That's exactly what the perception was. And it wasn't even the case. How many times have we been at work and we're trying to help people, but because of what we're saying and how we say it, where we find ourselves on the offensive. Let me rephrase that. We find ourselves on the defensive. Not realizing that we offended them, and not realizing that because we offended them, now they're not even trying to hear anything that we're saying. The worst part about, not realizing that your communication may be off is because a lot of times, like we're saying something good. You know what I mean? Like we have good intentions. We're giving gold. We're trying to help people. But when you don't understand the language, right? Like you don't understand the culture. You don't understand the person or the audience. You can't read the room. You end up missing the mark. Us as leaders, that's key. Us as spouses, that's kind of key. Us as parents, and you know that based off of what you say to your child is how your child is going to react. That's the exact same way. That's the exact same way. So with that being said, man, like we understand the what, but how do we fix our communication? First and foremost, I really want to say, like, the words treat others the way that you want to be treated is such a key thing. You feel me? Like it's such a key thing because a lot of times, like we're speaking to people and let me rephrase this real quick because I said treat others in a way that you want to be treated, but I really need you to understand that you have to treat people at the level in which they need to be treated. And what I mean by that is that you giving them a level 10 advice, but they're coming from a level 1 mindset. You know what I mean? And I'll say that again, like you got to give advice or you got to speak to people at the level in which they are at. You feel me? You have to give advice at the experience in which they are at. You're giving them experience. You're speaking to them in a manner in which you would think that they will understand. But the reality is that you're giving them level 10 advice, but they're at a level 1 mindset. And what I mean by that, because once again, communication is key. So I have to be able to express this. I said that you're at a level 1 mindset because you're still going through this situation. You still may be triggered by certain words. You may still feel a certain way emotionally about the conversation. I may be past it. Notice that I said that I was speaking from hindsight earlier. I may be past this. But a lot of times, like, we're given this advice, we're speaking to people in a state in which we're already past. Meanwhile, they're going through it. No wonder the communication is being missed. I can't stress this enough, man. A lot of times, like, you're saying some good shit. You're saying some good shit. But because of how you're saying it and the words that you choose to you choose to utilize, your entire message is muted. How many times do we find ourselves feeling like we can't connect with somebody? The reason why you can't connect with them is because you're not communicating in a way that they will understand. These are things that I had to tell myself. And this all happened within the past 48 hours. I said that, like, the things that I'm saying would help my target audience. This would help my community. But if I don't say it correctly, right? Like, if I don't choose my words wisely, they're not going to hear me. You're calling these Marines shitbags, Demetrius. Demetrius, you calling these Marines shitbags. How many times do you think they hear that word on a regular basis? You're past that. You feel me? You're past that stage of being a shitbag. You became that top tier performer, so you don't see yourself as a shitbag. So when you hear that word shitbag, it don't even resonate the same way that it's going to resonate with them, because they still see themselves as that. They still feel like that. They're still affected by that. And for some, they believe that they are that. So when you say something, although it may be good, bro, it may be good, you're hurting them. You're hurting the message. Once again, all of this is hindsight. You feel me? All of this is hindsight of me speaking. Because 48 hours ago, I was not trying to hear none of that shit. I would get back-to-back messages, right? I would get back-to-back messages about how, X, Y, and Z reasons. And I would just say something. And as I go into the next phase of this episode, I really want you to understand is that your ego is the reason why you can't fix yourself. I'll say that again. Your ego is hindering your gift. Your ego is hindering your talent. Your ego is hindering the message. Because of your ego, you can't understand what other people are saying. Remember when I had said that, a lot of times we're just listening to what people say. And we're not even hearing what they're saying. We're just listening. So that way, once they're done talking, we can go ahead and say our response. That's our ego. I don't know who needs to hear this, man, but it's okay to be wrong. You feel me? It's okay to admit that you're wrong. It does not make you incompetent. It does not make you a failure. It does not mean that you can't do the job. You were just wrong in which the direction you were going. And I bring that up, man, because after the conversation, I sat back and I was just like, damn, if I did not have this conversation with that young man, I probably would have still been riding on my ego, believing that I was in the right. And the whole time I was actually in the wrong. You know what I mean? A lot of us are missing the opportunity to strike gold because we don't like the fact that somebody told us that we were using the wrong tool. I'll say that one again. A lot of us are missing the opportunity to strike gold because we don't like the way that someone told us that we were using the wrong tool. Your ego is the one that's fucking you over. If somebody comes up to you and tells you that they don't like the way that you said that, ask them why. And then take a step back and listen to what you had said to them. You know what I mean? If somebody comes up to you and says like, hey, the presentation in which you are delivering, it's not resonating with everybody, don't get mad. You feel me? Because one thing that I feel like a lot of us need to understand is that our ego allows us to miss opportunities because they're not being perceived in the manner in which we want them to be dressed up in. You know what I mean? Because it's not catering to our ego. Let me rephrase that. It's not caressing our ego. You feel me? We ignore it. We think that we're above it. But a lot of times, man, like some things come at you and you just got to be able to take it. You got to be able to take it, dissect it, and then break out the details and pull from it. That's really what it means when they say put your ego to the side. So with that being said, man, like as we move forward in these episodes and as I move forward with my content and as I just move forward with communication, I really just want to take a step back and just analyze the things that I'm saying and what I'm saying, because I might actually be missing, I might be missing the mark. You feel me? We might actually just be missing the mark and not even realize it because we just so accustomed to speaking in this manner. And just like that, another extraordinary thought left this ordinary mind. I hope you enjoyed this episode half as much as I enjoyed making it. Now, do me a favor, if you're on Apple or Spotify, don't forget to leave a 5-star review for this podcast. And lastly, hit that subscribe button because this podcast deserves to grow just as